Thank you. Our next question will go to Dan Lamothe, Washington Post.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thanks for your time today. Secretary Austin, a number of lawmakers and observers have said that at this point it makes sense to send a small number of Abrams tanks, if only to encourage Germany to unlock the Leopard tanks that they have not sent. Is that feasible? And if not, why not? And for the chairman, please, given the amount of armor the United States and allies are sending at this point, how confident are you that they can put together a coherent offensive in the coming months? To what extent, to the extent you can, what might that look like? And separately, you just referenced the large number of casualties. Can you give us any update on what you're seeing at this point for casualties on both sides? Thanks.
I think you heard the German Minister of Defense say earlier today that there's no linkage between providing M1s and providing Leopards. And I think he was pretty clear about that. So this notion of unlocking, you know, in my mind it's not an issue, and more importantly, in his mind as well. And in terms of providing capability, what we in the department always look at is, you know, providing credible combat capability. We don't do things or employ capabilities as a notion, you know, as you know, for anything other than providing credible combat capability, and that's where our focus will be in the future, whatever we do, whatever we employ.
So Dan, on the in order to execute a successful offensive operation at the tactical or operational level, which is really what we're talking about here, for the Ukrainians, you've got to not only man the unit, which the Ukrainians have the personnel, but they have to be trained. And so they got to be married up with the equipment, and then they got to be trained. And if you look at the weather and terrain, et cetera, you can see that you have a relatively short window of time to accomplish both those key tasks. So that's very, very challenging to do that. For all these different nations that were here today, to assemble all of the equipment, get it all synchronized, get the Ukrainian troops trained, et cetera, that'll be a very, very heavy lift. Confident, yes, I think it can be done, but I think that it'll be a challenge. There's no question about it. So we'll see. I don't want to predict one way or the other, but the Ukrainian forces so far have executed at least two, and perhaps even more than that, very successful offensive operations. One up around Kharkiv, crossing the Oshkil River and over into the Russian lines to the east of Kharkiv. And then they've run a very successful operation down in Kherson. So it remains to be seen, but the equipment's got to get married up with the people got to get trained on the equipment, and all of that's going to have to get shipped into Ukraine, et cetera, all put together inside of a coherent plan. Obviously, General Zaluzzi and I and others have discussed what his visions are, not in executable level detail yet, but he's working on that, and we'll see which way it goes. In terms of casualties, you know, the numbers of casualties in war are always suspect, but I would tell you that the Russian casualties, last time I reported out on it publicly, I said it was well over 100,000. I would say it's significantly well over 100,000 now. So the Russians have suffered a tremendous amount of casualties in their military, and that includes their regular military and also their mercenaries in the Wagner Group and other type forces that are fighting with the Russians. They have really suffered a lot. Now you saw that the Russians did a called up in their mobilization 300,000. I think they were able to get maybe 200, 250,000, something in that range. So they're replacing their losses in terms of manpower, but they have suffered a huge amount. Ukraine has also suffered tremendously. You know that there's a significant amount of innocent civilians that have been killed as a result of the Russian actions. The Russians are hitting civilian infrastructure. There's a significant amount of economic damage, significant amount of damage to the energy infrastructure, and the Ukrainian military has suffered a significant amount of casualties themselves. So this is a very, very bloody war, and there's significant casualties on both sides. And this is why I say that I think that sooner or later, this is going to have to get to a negotiating table at some point in order to bring this to a conclusion, and that will have to happen when the end state, which is a free, sovereign, independent Ukraine with its territory intact, is met. When that day comes, then people will sit down and negotiate an end to this. But there's been a huge amount of suffering on both sides.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is all the time we have available today. Mr. Secretary, General Milley, thank you both, gentlemen. This concludes our press briefing. Thank you.